So I'm going to put in the chat box the PDF that James gave us. So if you didn't have a chance, obviously, to download it, me learning how to do all this is just quite the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah, I only gave you guys like a whole hour to download and print this, so I didn't give you a lot of notice here. But
yeah, so
if you,
okay.
yeah, if
You
you're
can
able
get
to print it,
okay.
it could be a little bit better to fill out as we go along, or if you just want to take notes in a separate document as we go
And it's like 4 pages, so it's easy. So I printed mine as a guide there. All right, so we're recorded. Let me screen share. Hey, Allison, thanks for hopping on.
No problem. I'm just trying to get situated here.
I have to fill me in on your amazing KW announcements. Richmond
It was
edition.
very applicable to individual agents. So you can imagine my excitement.
Versus team. Well,
yeah.
Sometimes you kind of lump. Can you see, have you and the PowerPoint together? Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
You can move it to the right a tiny bit.
Really? Like this?
Maybe.
How do I do
Okay,
that?
that's good.
Yeah, you're good.
I like seeing people, and I need the PowerPoint to kind of keep me on point. So this is my crazy modified version how to do it. So really today what we're going to do is kind of talk about strategies for branding ourselves. I will tell you, when I got in real estate 15 years ago, I'm going to say this nicely, I guess. Real estate agents, most of them don't know how to brand themselves. And it was crazy that I came from Nordstrom, where there's that iconic brand and reputation. And then I come into real estate making, you can make a good amount of income. And there is crazy clip art and crazy looking websites, and they're selling a crap ton of houses. So I don't really understand that. So over the 15 years, I still haven't figured that out, because some of the most successful people in at least the Richmond market, some of their branding is interesting. So I felt like we needed to kind of have a discussion about it. A lot of you on this call are great at branding, so I'm not talking about you, but maybe our counterparts. So I always kind of go to this: there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And I think part of it's just that lack of confidence at the beginning when you're in real estate. But every single person on this call has been in real estate for a while. They've got some transactions under their belt. They understand that the value of leveraging your brand. So for a few minutes, I wanted to spotlight a couple rock stars in our coaching organization that are here to support you. And the first is Jennifer, which I love your new headshot, by the way. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Leaning forward. I like that. It's very approachable. So Jennifer, I wanted to just get a couple insights from you. You're with Richmond Branding Company. Obviously, you're a real estate agent. All of us know you on that level as well. But tell us a little bit about Richmond Branding Company, but then give us some branding, a couple little tips that you're seeing people do. And I will say I have some of her swag on it. She did a cool vest for me and my cups. All kinds of cool stuff.
That cup really turned out great. Yeah, so
So give me a little rundown of what you think. Go ahead.
We are obviously a branding company, but we provide your brand on different apparel and promotional items. So we help you get the word out with your clients and your customers, basically. So we do this so that people can identify you with your specific brand, and you'll learn more of that, hear more of that later. But what we do is we take your logo and we'll stick it on, any apparel that you have, that you're thinking that you want. Definitely my advice though is to make sure that you are still presenting yourself in a professional manner when you are wearing your apparel. So that, put your best foot forward with your clients. First impression instills trust in your client as well. So you want to make sure that you are wearing what you need to be wearing. I mean, there's a time and a place with a hoodie, and believe me, we actually have had somebody reach out to us and say that they got their first lead wearing their hoodie in a Home Depot. as a real estate agent. So it was amazing. So it made me kind of feel really good. She had a logo on the front and then a big logo on the back of her hoodie. So this stuff totally works. As Drew, he's even got his coffee mug. One of the great things is to give your clients some things to have with your logo on it. You know, the more people that see it, the better off you're going to be. It's a very cost-effective way of getting your name out there and making sure that people remember who you are. So,
and a couple things, if I can piggyback on that, it's also,
yep.
I have commitment issues with getting like 3,000 coffee mugs, like crazy
Yep.
quantities. You know, you are really great at sourcing out like places that can do smaller quantities, like 50 or something like that.
Absolutely.
Places are still good. Other places I've used for branding, they're like, yeah, that'll be $1 a piece if you buy 3,000. I'm like, I don't
3,000.
Yeah.
I don't even like 3,000 people. Is what,
Yep.
exactly.
If you can buy 25 of them. They might be a little more expensive than if you buy, you know, a 3,000 of them, but we can definitely find. So my goal is to find you the quantity that you want for the budget that you have in mind as well. Sometimes it doesn't always work, but most of the time I can find something.
And also, if you're not creative, she sent me an email with, I think, 12 things. And I was like, oh, I love this, don't love this. So I'm not the creative one when it comes to what the heck you put a logo or branding on. And I think Chelsea gives recommendations on colors, like a couple things. She was like, yeah, the color is not going to show up correctly. I'm not a good visual of what the end product is. And then I'd be really pissed off if I couldn't see my logo on the right color. So anyway, so she will be posting different things as far as kind of showing us different ideas, but her website is really good. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot of things on the website. So my advice is sometimes people really get overwhelmed with the website just because there's so many items. And it always says, you know, if you're looking for apparel, I don't have minimums on apparel. A few things I do have minimums on, but we can go over that later if, you know, whatever it is. But if you have an idea of something that you want, please call me, reach out and ask, because I will find it for you. I will help you and guide you into I'll give you ideas. Just like Drew said, I'll give you ideas on what we can do with your ideas. We'll just run with it. And, but don't get overwhelmed. If you start to get overwhelmed with the website, just reach out and I will.
I didn't put the website, it's richmondbrandingco.com.
Yeah. Yep. It's a great site, but it does have a lot.
All right, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And I love all of that. And then Allison, give us an update on you as far as you have been, is it October or November when you kind of joined our organization when we were inside a brokerage? Now we're kind of independent. So give us an update on what you do, what some feedback, some branding tips that you can give our folks.
Sure. Yeah, I think I joined you guys in November. So for those of you that I don't know, I'm Allison Schwalm. I have a marketing company called Schwalm Real Estate Services, and I provide, you know, freelance marketing work to the Freedom folks. And I also have clients outside of this group. But I do a lot of things like freelance newsletters, and that was going to be my tip. I think I was just reading something about like trends for 2021 and about communicating with your folks, and it said make sure most of your stuff is digital. And so in my previous life, I was an email marketing manager for a nonprofit social enterprise that did fundraising and that type of stuff. So I was in charge of writing our weekly newsletter. And so my advice is this is a really easy way to communicate with people, just on a schedule. Like every month you're sending something. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be crazy in depth. It can be literally 3 articles. Provide some information about the market. I think everybody wants to know what's going on right now. So, you know, hey, take a snapshot of the MLS, you know, pull some of those stats from the MLS report that is published quarterly. My other thing included some home trends. People want to know about the color of the year. People want to know about, you know, what are landscaping things that I can do, you know, to up the value of my house. And then include something about yourself, and include some of your recent closings, or is there a charity that's really important to you? I know, like, if you're on the board of a animal rescue or something like that, and you guys have stuff going on, include something like that so your folks see to get to know you a little bit and add some personality to it. I think it's a really easy way. If you follow the old like KW33 touch model of like how many times you need to, communicate with somebody, that gives you 12 touches during the year.
Right.
And it's a way to, doing email, you can see the responses. If you're including links, you can see people clicking off of it. You can see what people are interested in. And then it informs your content month to month. You see everybody's clicking on things about the stats of the house. Then you tailor your content to, things about the housing market. You see that nobody is clicking on that and everybody's clicking on stuff about farmhouse trends or modern is the new farmhouse. Well, you can include more information about that. So
what platform would you recommend? Or you probably use tons of them because of your background. User-friendly, filters that you didn't know how to do it.
I think a lot of them, it's comparing, it's 6 one way, half dozen the other. So I know something that I've talked about, like with Austin and a couple of other people on this call. I've used MailChimp a lot, and I just feel like the interface is easy. It's a relatively low monthly cost, but a lot of databases, if you're using Referral Maker, if you're using things like that, have some of those things built in. So it really depends on what you're using. I write newsletter content for several people, a couple of brokerages and that kind of thing. So some I have that they don't even do a email newsletter. They do a PDF newsletter that their agents print, and they put in their item of value that they're mailing to their database every month. And so, but then they take a, PNG file and they upload it to their Facebook. So a lot of times your newsletter content can get a little bit more traction. Like you can post them individually as posts on your social media page or that type of thing. So just think about, multiple ways to use content and multiple ways to communicate with your folks. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Well, I think COVID, people are seeing more email. We're at home, or we're a little bit more stationary. So we're looking at emails in a different way. I'd be surprised what the pre-COVID versus now open rate of emails and digital stuff is. Probably higher.
Right. I would assume so. And I also think that you get to, I know I get a daily e-newsletter from a political writer, with just kind of a, hey, this is what's going on in the world. And it's probably the email that I open most often because I don't consume a lot of other media. And so it's like when you do know that you've got this trusted source, right? And like you as the agent should be the trusted source for your folks. Like I'm hoping that one email a month is going to be something that is actually getting opened and that type of stuff. But really looking at open rate and close rate, like that's my nerd side of going, okay, we've got an open rate, let's tweak subject lines, let's do that kind of stuff. So, and hopefully this kind of ties into some of the branding thing of letting your voice shine through and that type of stuff. And I'm here to help with those types of things if that's something that you're trying to implement. They're not a huge lift, and I'm working on a couple of them for folks on this call, and so I'm excited to get those out and see what it does. Hopefully, you're getting some replies and saying, hey, I saw this in the article, like I'd love to have a CMA on my house or something like that.
That's what we're going for. That's the whole point, right? But thank you, Allison.
Exactly. No problem.
Awesome. So guys, hey, well, I'll introduce James. You also may know Ryan as well. He has definitely been in the real estate space for a while. But James is the CEO and co-founder of FreshMove Media. And we were introduced to him and his amazing, talented staff. I think it's been 6 months, maybe a little longer. And we literally are met, I think, in that room that he's physically in. And so we met them to talk about how to brand us. That was before anybody knew that we were transitioning to the Freedom companies. And so he walked us through a lot of what he's going to walk through today with you. It was really good. It allowed me and everybody that was in that room that day to think at our brand differently. So he's going to walk us through that exercise. That PDF is in the chat, but he's going to share screen and walk us through. I'd like for you guys, I challenge you guys to participate with James. He's really good at consulting with us. And I think starting to dig into your brand isn't always just about the color of your logo, although that's important. He's really going to get into the telling your own story, what crafting that brand or that vision value proposition. And sometimes that's the stuff we get stuck on that we can't figure out. And we kind of stick generic things in there. And so all of us as real estate agents look the same, and then the consumer gets very confused on who should they choose, right? And we're in this competitive market, especially with sellers, they need to be choosing you guys, right? And so we need to make sure we're crafting that message appropriately. And I think James is the perfect one to walk us through and brainstorm that. So it's high participation, unmute yourself. I know Zoom's weird. Sometimes we overlap in conversation. I don't think James is too formal to just say, come on in, do what you need to do. So I want you guys to definitely participate at a high level, right? So unmute yourself, listen up, take notes, and let's kind of get started. James, you ready?
I am all set. All right. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Drew. And hello, everyone. So I just want to start by saying I am by no means a real estate expert. I am not well-versed necessarily in your industry. We have built a number of websites for realtors. We've done some brand packages for realtors. So I understand some of kind of the higher level concepts. And while my business partner is much more like into the world of real estate and understands the ins and outs, I'm going to take this more from a little bit of an outsider perspective, right? Because I think ultimately, sometimes it's easy in our respective industries. We have this with digital too, to kind of just get so like in the jargon, right? And in the world that it's hard to step outside of it. And that's important when you talk about branding, because all of your clients are outside of your world, right? So you need to be able to connect with them. So there's three main topics here that I want to talk about with crafting your brand. First is understanding and forming your unique value proposition. This could not be more important than it is for real estate agents, because there are so many people that do what you do. And the last thing you want to do is just kind of sound like everyone else. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The second is your core values. And so as if you have a goal or ambition of building a team or building an organization or just for yourself, having a good understanding, a clear understanding of your authentic values will help you connect better with clients. And then the third being your bullseye target audience and the people you really want to talk to. And I want to drill down on that too, because I think so many times people in business say, well, I just kind of want to talk to anyone, right? Everyone and anyone. If they're interested, I'm interested in talking to them. And there is some value of really narrowing that down. And then at the end, I'll just give you a quick checklist of running items that are things to consider once you've kind of done this upfront work. The way I want to break this down is each page I go through, I'm just going to kind of go through the different questions. I want you to be thinking about them, and I want you to actually take 90 seconds to a minute, or a minute to 90 seconds to sit down and just like write out and type out some of these things. And then I'm going to ask for some participation right at the end of the section to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking for my value proposition, and see what the group thinks. And I like it to be kind of collaborative in that way. That's a lot of the way that Drew, was talking about with our meetings, is that we don't just build a website where it's like, okay, here's the framework and this is what it is. We're really like pulling out from the business owner these concepts such that we can build the website in a way that's going to match and line up with that brand. So let's dive in here. All right, value proposition. So just to define what this is what you're going to offer, the benefits you're going to offer, the value you're going to offer to a client that's different than other people in the space. So you want to ask yourself, what are you or your team best at? And on the flip side of that, what do you not do well? I think it's important that you don't lose sight of that too. Because sometimes we only think about this, and that's cool, but you also got to think about what you don't do well, in the sense that you don't really want to make that a strong part of what you're promoting to clients that you could potentially work with. I'll give you an example. In our business, we don't work well with franchises. It just is not a good fit, because franchises are handcuffed to what they can do in digital between what their franchisor will allow them to do. So it hurts our ability to be able to serve them. So we just know that, hey, if there's any kind of relationship with the franchise, probably not going to be a good fit for our business. So you're vetting the client, they're vetting you in the same way. What do clients derive from working with you? Other than the main thing, which is what? Selling their house or buying a house. But what else are they deriving in their relationship with you through the process? Aside from results, what does it feel like to work with you? I think that's an important question too, because so many people are making these, it's a really big financial decision. So sure, there's a lot of logic and reason that goes into that, but there's huge amounts of emotion that's tied into somebody buying a home, right? So, there's a sense of attachment to whatever they find and they fall in love with. So what is it going to feel like to work with you? And start thinking about that. And then from that, really assembling your top 2 to 3 value propositions based on these questions. So I want to give you like 60 to 90 seconds, kind of give some thought to this, jot down some notes, think about some things. In fact, I'm going to turn some classical music on here, and then you can think about it as we're going. And then I'm going to ask for some involvement. Okay, who would like to share? So if you were to take a best stab at your top 2 or top 3 value propositions, things you're offering the client, what would you say they are?
I will chime in, James. My name is Austin. I'm the team leader at Eden Properties. I would say that our top 2, really 3 value props is that through working with us, you get the entire network of relationships we have. So we pride ourselves on the have a guy moment. But it's that we have a preferred vendor list. We provide people should any hiccups come up throughout the transaction, but also beyond it. So it's providing that network of people that we have to protect your interests, but also it couples with constant contact, not only throughout the transaction, but before, during, and after the sale. So those are our 2, I think, that you really get with working with our team.
Okay, so you would say it's communication through the whole process, right? Contact, back and forth, right, is happening.
Yep.
Network of relationships, your valued relationships of vendors, right? I think that's a really great one. I think that is a direct, like, this is what we have, and they'll be able to see the tangible, relationships of, you need a plumber, we got a plumber, you need an electrician, we got an electrician, you need somebody to do tile work, increase the value of your listing, we got that person, right? Mm-hmm. So, and you can rattle off examples that are really great. I would challenge Austin, the second one, the communication element, because okay. I would say dig deeper on that, because is there a realtor that is ever going to not say that they're going to talk to you through the whole process, right? I mean,
they don't say they will, but then they don't answer the damn phone.
Yeah,
true.
That was my thought, Drew.
Yeah, true. And so that's very true. They'll be
so you might be truthful, but they're all saying the same thing on that one.
Yeah. So it's like, is there another way to have to frame that, right, in a way that's unique, that isn't?
And I wrote down number 3, and this is kind of ties into number 2, and that was the idea that constant contact continues outside of the transaction as well. So we used to call it service beyond the sale, and that kind of obviously feeds back into the vendor relationship thing. But it's interesting you said that, because for don't do well, I wrote scale quickly or delegate. And these kind of tie together. If we're trying to be that constant contact, obviously that creates a ceiling for how many individuals I personally can stay in touch with, or the team can stay in touch with. So that was kind of the devil's advocate, so to speak.
Sure. Well, you know, and actually that's not a terrible thing to promote to clients, right? Is to say, hey, we only can service a certain number of people, and because we want to do them really well, right? Like we want to have really great relationships with the people we do work with. You know, we've had that conversation with clients where we said, you know, hey, we can only handle a handful of businesses at any given time for all of their marketing needs. So we want to make sure that's going to be a really good fit. And that business feels special, right? So the same way your client feels special because there's now the connection there. I think that's an interesting way to frame it. Certainly, right? That's a different take. Good stuff, Austin. Appreciate that.
Cool. Appreciate it. Yep.
Any other thoughts?
What did you guys do? Yeah, go for it, Jeffrey.
Yes, well, okay. Oh, sorry. This is Jennifer Elliott. I'm with Century Residential. I'm new to Drew's program here, but so I work mainly, my niche is military because I'm a veteran and my husband is active duty Army. And so I'm with Century Residential where 90% of the agents are military or spouses. I'm both. And so for my value propositions, I pretty much put down that I have the military knowledge of all the programs, the loans, the benefits that they get through the military that help them with home buying or selling. I put that I have the experience PCSing myself several times, so I have that experience for that personal touch to be able to relate to them and kind of figure out tactics while serving in the Army or the military. And then also with Century Residential, because we are mostly all military, I have those connections with other bases in other states where I can refer my people to and make sure that they're taken care of because they have the same training that we do.
I love it. You know, Jennifer, what I really like about that is I like the fact that you have insider knowledge that you're able to leverage. So the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is framing it in a way that's like, we speak your language, right? Because I mean, sometimes like people talk about military, like my dad was in the Navy for 35 years. So like at the dinner table, he was talking in acronyms the entire time, right? Yeah. And it's quite literally another language to people, right? So, yeah. So I think that's a way to really identify with people is we speak your language, we get it. We know what it's like to be a military family. We know what it's like to be moving all over the place, all over the world. That's a great niche to be in, right? Because there's a lot of movement there, there's a lot of things happening, and if you're tied into that network, then I think that's awesome. Drilling down on that and making that your specialty, that's great.
Yeah, and the one thing that I wrote that I don't do well or that I don't like to do is rentals, and that makes it hard because sometimes when they are PCSing and they're like on a fly and they don't have a lot of time, most of them want to try to rent before buying. They want to get a feel for the area before. And so I guess something that I'm trying to work on is finding other agents that do work in that niche, that work with rentals or property management, that help military people. So if anyone knows of anyone, send them to me.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like what Austin said. It's the leverage piece. Don't, farm out what you don't like to do. So you just got to find that person. So I love that.
Yep. That's great. Okay, good stuff. Let's move to the second page here. Your core values. So the way I would differentiate this from your value proposition is your value proposition is the value you're offering to a client, what the value is they're deriving from working with you. Your core values are these innate values that are important to you or your team or your organization, and what you want your organization to stand for, right? So these are the things you fall back on in times of challenge or frustration, or things aren't going the way you want them to. Falling back on these values are really important. I would say another way to think about this too is, what are actions or attitudes that you observe the competition doing that get on your nerves, right? So what are things that other agents do that frustrate you in working with them, right? And say to yourself, maybe I can frame my core values in opposition to those things, right? So that's something to think about. And then I would say, also sometimes the best feedback is from the outside, right? So what things do you notice that clients consistently compliment you on? And sometimes you might think you do something really well, but they keep complimenting you on something else, right? That feedback's necessary to hear to kind of reframe your thinking on it. And then finally, when presented with a challenging situation, what innate core beliefs do you fall back on? So, for me, whenever we're having challenges working with a client or we're having challenges with a project, for me, the thing that helps is to just get in a room or get on Zoom and just like in a collaborative way, talk things out. Sometimes I just need to like be able to talk things out with a client to like eventually get to the place where we're both in alignment and like we feel really great about the end results. So that's me, right? That's not everybody though. Some people would go into research mode and try to learn everything they possibly can about something and then come back with the knowledge that will help that person. Other people, are focused on pushing through to get the results. So just thinking about your personality, the things that you value both personally and professionally, and let's put down a few core values here that would that would help you identify where you stand on this. So I'm gonna give you all 60 to 90 seconds to work on that, and we will come back with feedback. Okay. All right. Who would like to share a couple core values?
What do we think?
I'm happy to chime in again if nobody else wants to.
I feel like Austin, you get the wheels turning for us. Go for it.
Okay, cool. So I kind of went back to the leveraging the relationships and that networking piece of it. But really it boils down to trust and building a deeper level of relationship. And part of the actions or attitudes that I dislike is when the transaction specifically in real estate is treated as a competitive nature. So it's kind of one agent wins, the other agent loses, or the buyer wins, the seller loses. I think it needs to be more of a win-win. We collaboratively work together. And I think the number one way to do that is through working within the relationships. So kind of to Jennifer's point and to Drew's point that he was making on behalf of that, if she's the military expert and that's what she revolves her business around, there should be a built-in relationship between other networks of agents, regardless of their brokerage or team or company that partner with her for that sake, because it provides a superior service to then your client by saying, oh, you have a military connection? Great, so does this person. It's a deeper level of trust that's formed there by us as the agent establishing that mutual connection, or that reason for breaking the ice, so to speak.
So Austin, would you say you're feeling like it's the whole you get more of what you want through honey than vinegar type of situation? Like there are some agents that are like far more it's cutthroat negotiating style that like, it's like if we're not winning, then if you're not losing, then we're not winning type of situation.
Sure,
right?
Sure. And I would say that's the piece of it from like a sales perspective or from a core value that we try to keep in terms of agent to agent or from a team perspective, but as far as like what the client gets from us, they get almost a extended level of trust or security that they can feel, knowing that the people we recommend or the services we recommend have been vetted, have been trusted. There's that experience there too. So that's kind of where that trust relationship piece comes from. And that extends to other agents as well. It's not just those list of vendors.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, trust is a really important component of any kind of like strong long-term relationship, right? And they have to trust you. There's absolutely no doubt, right? And they have to, and it only goes as far, those relationships you have only go as far as they trust you and trust that the person you're going to give them is going to do the work, right? So yeah, okay.
And I heard in there, Austin, which I think is a good point. Trust is great, but I think a lot of times agents think trust needs to be branded that they're the number one team, or they've sold 3,000 houses this last year, which is so ego-based. It's not service-based.
And people don't care anymore.
That's so interesting that they're trying, their goal in branding, their core value is trust. They're just taking it from the one side of the coin, that the reason to trust me is because I've sold 3,000 houses and I'm such a rock star and I have my face on a truck. And then you are coming from the angle on the other side of the coin that says, we build trust because we want to build the relationship and we want to deepen it. You're using the same word, but the interpretation of what that word I think is. So James, how do you craft that message so because he could use the word trust all day long. I would see trust as, oh, here we go, he's about to tell me he sold 3,000 houses. So how would you help him to use that word more effectively to build a brand that's his version of trust, which I think is spot on, because the consumer doesn't care about us and the 3,000 houses. They
say, what can you do for me? Yeah.
So before James jumps in on that, I think what was interesting, Drew, is that I wrote down integrity, which I really appreciated Austin's perspective, because I always think about myself. I do. Like, I don't think about pitching myself as the best agent in the world because my face is on a truck, but I'm always thinking about me, right? Integrity. I come from a place of integrity. But Austin, when he used the word trust, it became relational. And, that, which is, I would definitely pitch myself as an agent with heart, because I kind of do that thing too. And that was a whole nother way. So I could see how, like, both are necessary, right? Like, I can't just focus on my integrity, because what does that mean to somebody else if they can't trust, if I'm not relaying that they can trust me, right?
Right. Yeah.
And my
win-win.
Well, my question with it all too, and Drew, you kind of hit the nail on the head, and I was talking to Brandon this morning before our podcast about it. It's almost like we can't show that level of trust or sense of security they have with us throughout the transaction unless something goes wrong. And that's hard to market. So that's my question to James too, is, I mean, for our podcast's sake and for story's sake, we wanted to say, well, yeah, this person, they didn't think it was possible to get through the transaction because XYZ happened, or we were able to navigate an electrical repair or a structure engineer or a plumber. Like, we don't want to market those things, because if I'm the average consumer, if I'm the average consumer, it's like, damn, every transaction he does, something goes wrong. It's great he's got somebody, but he needs to. And so I don't want it to be flipped.
Yeah, like the fire department putting out flames.
And nobody cares how many houses we sell anymore. I mean, it's just, there's so many different awards and misconstrued sanctions and different things out there that's not the message.
Agreed.
So,
agreed.
Yeah, I like what Drew asked.
Well, and that's going to be particularly important as millennials continue to age up, right? That they're not. I mean, you had a lot more Gen Xers and baby boomers that were much more transactional, right, in their approach. That it was like carrot and stick, like, hey, this is it. I want this. This is like that style. And you have that less with millennials. So a
lot more emotion.
so I think about a few things, right? I think about you, because you're talking about. So Don, you went into this. Is it Don or Veronica?
It's Don.
Don. Okay. So Don, you went into this from the integrity gap perspective, right? Which is like the internal, like, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, right? Austin's looking at this from like the trust relationship element of this, right? I would say leaning into, because what you're talking about, Austin, is it's a little scary to promote, like there's going to be problems with the transaction, but let's be real, like it's like very rare that there's never any single problems, right? Like it's very rare that there's like nothing.
Especially if you
like,
go through past the transaction. Yeah, it's like we want to hear from you if your heater blows or if you're so
I mean, something inevitably happens with the seller, with the inspection or whatever, right? So I think sometimes people value authenticity in leaning into that, right? That it's like, hey, listen, if any agent's telling you it's just going to be perfect, smooth sailing forever, like that's just not the reality, right? There is going to be problems. There's going to be challenges along the way. And part of what I pride myself as an agent is handling those challenges in stride and presenting, real solutions to help you through the process. So, I think there's some ways to craft that.
And I think if the word is transparency, you're not going to BS them, and you're also not going to sugarcoat them, right? You're gonna get in the core of it, and that transparency. I wrote down approachable. Like people understand when they're being sold to, and the world is getting further and further away from that. Yeah. And people want to have permission marketing, like where I'm giving you the green light to now sell me. Yeah. But so I think Don and Austin both, that's a great core value. I think screaming that and finding a way to articulate that is totally unique. I think agents are trying to do it. I don't see a lot of them doing it a high functioning way. Yeah. Again, the one thing I was thinking about is, tell your own story, crafting this brand. Testimonials or reviews, there's full transparency. They literally, you're using their words, you can't modify their words. I was coaching one of your team members, Amy, and her goal is to get 5 reviews a week. So she got 5 reviews, I think it was yesterday, the day before. We pulled them up. Nothing more transparent than physically seeing on Google and what they typed. She can't go in there and manipulate those Google reviews. They are exactly, even if they misspelled the word, it's showing up, right? So I think that could be something as crafting or building your brand is, if you really are going to put your money where your mouth is, really focusing on reviews, then blow those up on social media and blow those. You can be more authentic, trustworthy, and transparent than getting a bumper sticker that says, I like any properties because X, Y, Z.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point, Drew. Transparency, authenticity, right? Those are different ways of saying that. I will caution, there's one thing I will caution is that the trust thing, it can be a little slippery slope. You gotta be careful when you're promoting that, because sometimes people who talk too much about you can trust me or to be honest or whatever it is, they're saying those things to overcompensate for a lack of trustworthiness, right? So it is this delicate balance in branding yourself that you're always walking, where it's you want to indirectly infer the things that are really important to you, right? Without sounding like you're beating your chest, right? And overcompensating with it. Yeah. So, there's, and what you're getting at, Drew, is exactly the way you do it, right? Because that's like in other people's words, right? Them saying how you are, right? Versus just in your words, right?
And if you can do video testimonials, that would be even better. Less than 10 minutes. So they actually listen to the whole daggone thing. So anyway.
Can I clarify that you said millennials, as they age up, they are not as transactional, that they're more emotional?
Oh, yeah. Well, so what Austin was defining there. Yeah, what Austin was defining there was the level of need for collaboration and back and forth and talking things through. And there is certainly, like, among millennials versus older generations, that are much more like an older person might be like, hey, I don't care that you're an asshole. I care about getting the price, right? That's what I care about. And that's just going to become more and more not the case. And I'm speaking just among older millennials. It's hard to do like big sweeping stereotypes of an entire, I consider myself very different as a 34-year-old than like people who are even 24, right? And they're still millennials, but they're like younger millennials, right? So,
they get reviews on their damn burritos. So come on, they won't even buy a burrito unless they read the review about it. So, but that is that relational. They want to know what somebody else thinks of this organization. And they don't believe that commercial. They believe what the transparency of the consumer is telling them.
Well, and Drew, to your point, I think the way we share those reviews also needs to be authentic, because, and this is sharing from a little bit more of a personal experience with my wife, when she goes to shop for anything, she checks the reviews. And I was kind of laughing to myself as you were saying this. But she checks the reviews and looks for pictures of the item to make sure it's not a knockoff or a fake or rips or something like that. So it's even one step further than just saying, oh, that has 4,000 5-star ratings. She's looking at the exact reviews, and I'm sure people are taking that level of concern when it comes to a house purchase or a realtor or something like that. And so how we share those reviews is also just as important.
I think that's like to James' point. It can't look perfect in the package. We now that generation.
That bad feedback needs to be there too, et cetera.
Hey Jerry, I didn't see you popped on. I definitely think that's, and I think that's what real estate agents are struggling with. I think car manufacturers do a good job. I think restaurants do a good job of that. I think local establishments, and James, you work with a lot of local businesses, they've kind of figured it out, and realtors, where I feel like we're chasing behind the core values that what you started with is important to you and what you stand for, but it has to reflect the values of your consumer, of what you're trying to attract. So this one gets a little sticky pretty quick, and I think that's where agents sometimes come off on that ego stroke, because they don't know what to say and they don't know how to articulate it the right way. So this is actually a little bit. So we can talk about
going to the next kind of core value that, I mean, Austin was going with the integrity and the trust. One that I always go back to is professionalism, because I'm always thinking, like you said, what do you not like about what other agents do? Like, I hate when I see a crappy listing and just it's misspelled and it's poorly, marketed. And then I get, you sit there and you go, gosh, this person's going to make the same money doing this than not me doing this. And so it matters to me. What is also interesting, like Austin said, is clients don't know. So if they're selling a home, they don't know that there are professional agents and there are unprofessional agents. They don't really know the difference between somebody coming through the first house they've ever sold, taking professional pictures and staging versus just snapping it on their iPhone. So I think that's a word that gets lost too, because it's just like, you're professional, you negotiate, you present yourself professionally, you talk professionally, you engage with other agents professionally. But
so James, what do you think?
How does that translate to a client?
Yeah, I was gonna say that word professional is probably just like trust. It could be, you're right. I think that's
good. Something that kind of comes, I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head with what you're saying there, Don, and something that comes to mind is almost like refreshing professionalism, or refreshingly professional, because part of what I think of is like, there are so many agents, right? And they probably know somebody who's an agent, right? Whether it's a neighbor or a family member, sister-in-law or whatever. My sister-in-law in DC is a real estate agent, right? So like they probably know somebody who's a real estate agent. So, if they've had that experience in the past, that will totally ring true, right? Saying it's like, you are professional, because they probably, had some conversations with agents that were in the past. I guess the question becomes, though, Don, is that language more targeting first-time home buyers, or is it targeting people who are second-time home buyers, right? That have gone through the process already and probably experienced things that like they weren't happy about, right? And were disappointed by it. So you also need to think about like the frame of mind of who that person is in the scheme of things, and if they've experienced that before. I could say
first-time home buyer, they wouldn't even know what an unprofessional one is.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I'm a millennial.
Never thought of it that way.
I don't know. I would just assume that every agent, is kind of the same, right? but
problem. Yeah. Especially if you're listing a home. I mean, I shouldn't make that differentiation, but I do. I mean, I think you should be professional on whichever side you're on.
Well,
but
I wrote down communication, which I think is a professional thing, and that's on both sides of the fence, buyer, seller. But to get an agent to answer the daggone phone is like, you basically have to light their front.
And you can hire an agent and not know that they're not going to do any of those things. And people hire agents all day long and have zero understanding. So where I find myself and I know Drew's probably coached us on this, is that scripting or that pitch. So how do you brand yourself before you even have to give that listing presentation, that you're trying to share that and differentiate that, but also not dog the rest of the industry? You know,
I think
that's important. That clarification is important there, Don, right? Because if you're always just like taking down the competition or trying to belittle the other people, that's certainly not going to win you any friends or favors either, right? So there is that balance of like education, right? And it's like and kind of helping somebody understand the landscape. You know, I like to say things to clients that we work with, like, for example, when we have our first initial conversations, we give away a lot more than what other shops would do, right? Where we're giving up feedback and advice and, you know, things that we've seen in the past and things they could do on their own if they wanted to. And I know for a fact there are other shops that would be much more stingy about that, because like you got to pay us first, right? You know, and again, Drew might have a different philosophy on this because
I totally lead with value, you know, contribution. You know, I always say they have to test drive the car before they buy it, right? So giving any type of additional value at the beginning would help.
Yeah, and being able to then frame it in a way that's like, sorry, I cut you off there, Drew. Being able to frame it in a way that's like, hey, whether you work with me or somebody else, right? Like, here are some things to be aware of, right? So if it's their first time going through the experience, you know, maybe it's more like educational type perspective that you're bringing to the table.
That's a coaching dialogue that he just used. It's called negative positive. So he starts with negative, I'm not sure I can help you, but, you know, if going forward, or, you know, hey, we may not be a good fit in working together, yet if we do work together, I would, you know what I mean? So that's absolutely a dialogue right there. That's a script. I don't use that the word script anymore. Who uses 1985 scripts anymore? So, but that's a good dialogue conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the point, though, is that kind of the joke about scripting is it takes time of more agents and more people in our industry recognizing this problem, because there are still the agents out there that are saying this is how many houses I sell. And so they're creating almost like a stigma where people or the public that haven't been through a transaction, or even the ones that they did go through a transaction that were bumpy, that's the stigma. That's what they expect now. So their perspective is either I'm not using an agent, or if I have to use an agent, it's going to stink. So I might as well take the one that sells 1,000 a year because they show that everybody's using them. Or that's kind of the perspective that we're going against. So I say it all the time. We're combating the bad marketing or the bad images that are surrounding our industry, whether it be local or beyond.
I agree with that. I think the reputation is just assumed. Like, well, they can't be that bad of an agent because they've sold 3,000 houses, and then they get into it, they're like, wow, that's really bad.
Yeah, you actually don't talk to that person.
But then they just finish the transaction anyway, right? Because a lot of times in real estate, there's a contractual obligation. They can't just say, I don't really like you anymore. I mean, you can, but that's not a process. So
also expensive.
Well, James, bring us home. Let's see.
Let's go to
get us there.
Yep. The final here is your bullseye target client. And, you know, this is so hard. And I actually don't think in 60 seconds that you're going to be able to like fully craft this. I think it's important for you to take some time on your own to really talk this out with other people, to really think this through. But knowing exactly who you want to connect with and being very clear on that is so important. You know, we like to say to people in our space, we say in digital, if you try to talk to everyone, you end up talking to no one. And so there's real value in knowing exactly who you want to speak with and narrowing it as much as you possibly can. And don't get me wrong, there's still groups around that really target audience that will still find your verbiage appealing and still want to work with you, right? And that's great. So you're not doing it in a way that's going to turn people off, but you're doing it in a way that's very informed based on the types of conversation that you want to have with the types of people you want to have them. So when I say bullseye, what I'm referring to, you might have seen this chart or graphic at some point. I'm sure it's in some real estate, training session at some point, but it's the idea of, you know, the different rings of who you'd want to work with: A clients, B clients, C clients, D clients, right? And the fact that D clients that are not a good fit, if you take them on on will actually do a detriment to your business and to them. It's probably not good for them, and it's probably not good for you. So, Jennifer was mentioning that is like identifying that the whole rental side of things is really not a place she wants to play in. That kind of mud pit is for somebody else that can do it really well. Great. So she's defined that those would probably be for her C or D clients that she's really not interested in working with, but she still wants, out of the goodness of her heart, to help. So she finds somebody she could refer them to. Cool, right? Yeah. B and A clients are really the ones you want to work with. And the idea being your A clients, everything is targeting that A client, and then by being next to your A, your Bs will still be attracted to that, right? So think about, what's the makeup of your ideal client, and really try to narrow that age range as much as you can. Can you get it down to a 10-year range? Can you get it down to a 5-year range? Could you come up with a specific number, right? And it's like, this is the type of client I'd want to work with. For some realtors, Jennifer mentioned military. For other realtors, it might be drilling down into a specific ethnicity or cultural identity. One of our realtors is Hispanic, and so for him it was like he's bilingual, and so obviously the Hispanic community. But when we talked about it, we really had to dig down further than that, right? Because it was like there's so many different layers within the Hispanic community, and different families and different subsets of groups. So thinking about that. Then thinking about what is that individual's, what's their main priorities, right? Are they typically first-time home buyers? Are they second-time home buyers? Are they scaling up? Are they downsizing? Are they doing a rental property, right? What are their major big block priorities? What's their profession? What do they do for a living? How does that impact their lifestyle priorities, right? Maybe it's location really matters to them. Maybe having a yard, or having a shed out back, whatever it might be. And then, understanding how those priorities are going to move into what you can offer them. So we're not going to take the time to just review this on your own, but I think it's something that you should, outside of this meeting, really get clarity on and say, in an ideal world, this is exactly who I'd be serving. These are the types of people that I connect with. These are the people that fit my value proposition the most. And think about it. I like
this exercise because I think the words you say matter, especially in digital space. Hey, do you want to buy or sell? What is that? That is not specific. That is not bullseye. That is, what is that shotgun approach where it just splatters everywhere, right? So, are you do you have a house too large and want to downsize? That's more specific rather than, hey, do you want to buy and sell, right? So I love this exercise. I definitely think if you're on a team or even as a solo agent, really take this piece of paper and go through it, because I see such generic approaches to branding and marketing, and I think it needs to be much more bullseye specific. Yeah. If it's military, the word military goes in there. Seniors, downsizing, first-time homebuyers. Use the physical words. Stop saying, now is a great time to sell. Now is a great time to sell if you want to downsize, because you can get top dollar for your listing, right? Be more specific. So I love this exercise. I definitely want you to answer.
That's great.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Good stuff, Drew. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, let's talk about your checklist going forward, right? So the first thing that you should do is consider your value proposition, your core values, your target client, and craft a brand positioning statement based on that. So this essentially is one simple statement that encompasses who you are, what you offer, and who you serve. And this is actually challenging to write, right? This is not easy, right? Because this is one sentence.
Mine was like the 10 Commandments, and he kept saying, it's too large. What the hell are you trying to say here? So that one sentence is definitely,
it takes a real effort to really craft this, right? But once you have this statement, there's so much value to it, right? Because it's what you can craft taglines based on. It's what you can craft your signature line based on, even for emails. It's what you can have as your major statement on your website. When people come to your website, this is what they see, so they can quickly identify who you are and what you're about. There's so many different ways to use this. So there is a lot of value in taking some time to craft it. And then the second thing I would say is engage an agency or a freelancer like Allison, who was on the call earlier, to create for you a brand package. So that would include a logo. That would include every variation on the logo. You want all the file types, colors, fonts. A good quality agency or a good graphic designer will be able to deliver all of these things for you. And it's super important to have the right file types, to have the right options with your logo, both from colors and, you know, a monochromatic logo, so you can put white on white or white on black and black on white. You know, just those things are really important. And I see so many business owners and, you know, agents that like they just hired someone cheap, right? And it's like, I get it. You spend a few $100 on, like, you spend $150 on a logo.
Etsy,
like,
they all look the same, like from Etsy.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, that is just like, it's going to work against everything you're trying to do from a brand perspective to have something like that. So it is absolutely worth investing the money into. And by the way, I always say this to people, if you're going to grow a business, right? You're growing a team, you're growing your individual business. It's going to be infinitely more expensive for you to rebrand 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, after you have all these other things in place. It's always better to do it sooner rather than later. By the way, the other value of having all the files and everything you need is, like, if you engage a shop like mine to do a website, let's say, it is so nice. We love when clients can just literally hand us their brand package. And it's like, here's our brand package. Here's every logo variation that you could use on the website. Here's all the colors. Here's the exact text codes for everything, right? And it's awesome. So you will do yourself a favor down the road. Obviously, you need to look at, you know, then redesigning your other visual elements to include your branding statement, to include your core values, your value proposition, what you're offering. So that might be things like buyers and sellers packs, right? That could be, Jennifer, who was on earlier, talking about branding, right? And talking about promotional items, right? And swag, right? All that stuff, right? Looking at, hey, do we need to redo these things? Signage, business cards, one pagers. If you still use like a trifold or something, get rid of that thing. Just stick with, you know, in our opinion,
nobody reads that much.
Yeah. A one pager, and a very attractive one pager can do so many awesome things for you. In, like, you know, both telling your brand story and showing clients what you offer. Website, you know, for us, I'm just going to tell you, in our opinion, that these social platforms, you know, there's stuff you can do on them. Don't get me wrong. But the place that you build your business online, the foundation of your entire digital footprint, is your website. It has to be solid because everything feeds into that, right? Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, they're always changing the rules on businesses, and you never know if what you did last week is going to work again this week. The best analogy that real estate agents understand is on Facebook and on Instagram and these other platforms, that's all rented space. You do not own that space. That is not yours, it's theirs. And they want to keep people on their space. They don't want people going from their space to your space, right? Because then they lose them. So they want your money, right? They want you to spend money to boost posts and run ads and all those things. But ultimately, the goal should be to move them from that platform to the only place online you actually own. And the only place online you own is your website. Everything else is outside of your purview of ownership, and you're kind of playing by their rules. So investing into a quality website.
And I also think that it tells to the beginning of your conversation is, like, that's where they can truly see your whole story, and you get to tell. They can click on contact us or about our team or what our core values are. You know, Facebook and Instagram, all those, you're only as good as the refresh screen when somebody scrolled past it. So I think it's the way you framed it to us, which I thought really resonated, is that is your brick and mortar building. That's the storefront that they can keep coming back to, versus social media platforms, all digital. It's a one-hit wonder. You do one great post, get 1,000 likes, great. But guess what? The next post may get 10. You know, there's no consistency, but versus the website will have consistency through.
Is big corporate America still, because I come from the corporate background, but, you know, and obviously we've gone through like, oh my God, we all have to have a webpage, we have to have missions, vision, you know, about all this stuff. I feel, but I've been out of it a little bit, like corporate America is not focusing on their websites and update and refreshing, and like that's almost the last place I go these days if I'm looking up a company. I really don't.
So John, what would you say, and when you say that, when you're looking up a company, where do you go?
You know, I'm not really sure. I think, you know, because we're like, it's multitasking, which is a bad thing. So it's like, I'm like, you know, Google something, whatever comes up, does that have the phone number in it that I want, right? Or does that have the information I need?
Sure.
It's like that. It's that footprint that's out there on the internet.
Yeah.
Not necessarily looking for the vet. Now, that's probably a fault of my own, not to take the time to go to an official page. But
well, think about, like, I Google restaurants, right? Google is my platform. I see ABC restaurant. I do click on the button that says website because I want to see the food. I want to see the pricing. I want to see that. So it's the back door to the website. I will almost guarantee the Facebook, the Instagram, or the Google search to find that business from is linked to the back door of their website.
Yeah.
And the consumer don't realize that's where it's coming from.
Totally. And on that note that Drew's saying, you know, these are all basically what I'm saying is I'm not discounting the fact that you want to be present on these platforms, because you certainly do, right? You want a Google My Business listing. You definitely want a Facebook page. You definitely want to be present on Instagram and those things, right? Those are all great. But ultimately, your objective should be that people discover you there, but you really tell your story through the website, right? And that's where you can 100% control exactly what they see, right? When they come to your site, you can control the imagery they're seeing, the words they're seeing, and there's nowhere else on the internet that really you're able to control 100% their experience and they come and find you. So, and for some people, and by the way, don't get me wrong, there are some agents out there that's like, they're so relationship based. I get it. They don't feel like a website's important. What I basically say to them is the website in your case would be, not in your case, Don, but for this particular agent would be a credibility piece, right? That it's like when people do their due diligence, they heard about you as a referral, but they're like, I don't know, whether should I check this person out? Then they see the website, it's legit. Okay, cool. They want to work with you. For some people, a website's much more than that, right? For some people, a website is actual lead gen. It's actual like bringing in of new business, which don't get me wrong, that's hard to do as an individual agent, right? You know, to compete in that space with all the big dogs. But at a minimum, you know, it's a place that people can come to find out who you are and vet you through these things we talked about. And if they go there and they see your core values and those core values line up with their core values, they see your offerings and they see the value you're going to bring to the table, then they're more likely to say, hey, this is somebody I'd want to work with.
That's awesome. Good stuff.
Cool. Well, that's all I had. And I know we're a little over time here, so I guess
well, I wanted to end with one specific thing just to give you kind of a launching pad from what James shared with us. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, all right. My dog's taking over something. I did want you guys to see this one last thing. If I can slide you guys over. Actually, I'll just keep it like it was. Is just the fact that, I don't know if you guys know, I'm obsessed with this. We kind of really talked about all of these things, which I think is always interesting, but because we didn't have, but I love this book. I'm obsessed with tribes, which you guys, if you were in the book club, you know that I'm obsessed with it. And so I just took 4 literal text words, paragraphs out of that. I wanted to leave you with that because I really think that what James is really working towards us organically through these pieces of paper is to figure out who your tribe is. Like, who are you trying to tell your story to? So he really hit almost every single one perfectly. Building a tribe is finding a shared interest and always communicating a way they prefer. And he started off, it's like we planned it that way. James, like, that's truly important to know who your tribe is and who your tribe is not. And that's when he went through that first exercise is what does your competition do? What are the things you're not good at, right? Knowing that. And then most organizations spend their time marketing to the crowd. Smart organizations assemble a tribe. And again, that's kind of knowing that. I love when he was talking about that target or that bullseye target approach. That's really what the essence is, going through that A, B, C, D, and really looking at it, because I see so much of we're just trying to grab any human being that has a pulse that wants to buy or sell. And consumers can sense that pretty quick. And then the third one, if you want us to follow you, don't be boring. I love that one. I highlighted in the book. I think the cool thing in real estate is that we are independent contractors. We can build our own story and brand, and it doesn't have to be the boring everyday realtor that was maybe 1990, 1995. We can progress pretty quickly because we technically don't have that brick and mortar building. And then a true fan connects with other true fans and amplifies the noise the artist makes. And it's totally what we were talking about with, you just need, I love that you said you target the A and then you attract the B inside that target group or that bullseye. And that's totally what you're trying to build a fan base to where they actually do that. And I was talking, I'll end with this, is there's something that's interesting that I always hear in real estate space is lead generation. You got to lead generate all the time, because if you don't, you'll die. Well, wouldn't it be interesting if we told our story and built our brand so well that we were lead catching instead? They were calling us on the phone and we got leads from our social medias that said, hey, I want to buy and sell with you because Susie told me about you and Johnny told me about you. That's ultimately what a lot of real estate agents pride themselves on, is that referral program and that referral business. That's by properly branding and building a tribe. So I just want to end with that. Think about that as you're going to go through this exercise. I definitely want you guys to print this off. I'll email this. I think we already emailed it out, but I'll make sure you guys grab it. Go through this exercise. When I coach you at your one-on-ones, I'd love to get some ahas and dig deeper with you. And then I think that's it. I know you guys are all busy. Thank you, James, for breaking away your day and allowing us to mastermind with you. Anybody have any last-minute questions? Unmute. Otherwise, I'll see y'all soon. And I'm sorry you zoomed out. Some coffee.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew. That was nice.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
James.
guys.